Imagine realizing the person you love most has been plotting to steal your future all along. What would you do next? I arrived at Claire's family cabin on a late summer afternoon when the air was still warm enough to smell the sun-baked pines, and yet cool enough to promise relief from the city heat. The gravel drive crunched under my tires as I turned into the shaded yard. Claire met me on the porch, her auburn hair glowing in the waning light. She walked slowly down the steps, as though she had all the time in the world, and offered me her hand. The warmth of her fingers in mine felt like home. Behind her stood her sister Marissa, her posture elegant, her nails painted the pale pink of seashells, face composed in a practiced mask of hospitality. I couldn't shake the feeling that her smile concealed something she never intended me to know. Stepping into the cabin, I was enveloped by the comforting scent of burning wood and simmering soup. Their grandmother, a petite woman with silver hair piled atop her head in a tight bun, ushered me to a battered wooden table set near the stone hearth. She poured me a bowl of the thick chowder Claire bragged about on our video calls. As I ate, I listened to stories passed down like heirlooms. How Claire once built a fort of blankets behind the kitchen stove, how Marissa insisted on playing Mozart at every family gathering, and how grandmother used to sit on that very porch swing with her late husband and whisper about ghosts that haunted the lake after dark. I laughed politely, though a shiver danced along my spine at the mention of restless spirits drawn to betrayal. That night, beneath the sloping ceiling of the loft bedroom, I lay awake in the dim glow of a single oil lamp. Claire slept beside me, and with every soft breath I felt the gravity of the moment. I pictured the proposal I had rehearsed countless times. Getting down on one knee by the water's edge at sunset, the ring box trembling in my palm, Claire's eyes widening with surprise and joy. No one would have filmed the moment except the fading sun and the gentle ripples on the lake. My heart thrummed with anticipation. Sleep, however, proved elusive, and I spent those hours listening to the cabin creak around us, imagining the countless moments that had brought me here. The next morning, I awoke to the hush of conversation drifting through the crack under the bedroom door. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Claire, and crept downstairs. On the porch, Claire and Marissa stood over a weathered map spread across the swing seat. The map portrayed the cabin and its sprawling property in precise detail, but beneath the surface line someone had scribbled warnings. Cellar entrance? Beware. Hidden passage. X marks the spot. Their heads bent close together. They traced the lines with fingertips as though decoding a treasure map. I retreated into the cabin, mind buzzing. Why would they be planning to explore or avoid the cellar? Why would they write ominous warnings on paper that clearly held some meaning for them? I spent the day helping their grandmother with chores that felt sacred in their simplicity. She taught me to split kindling with a worn maul, to carry water in pails from the mountain spring, to scrub dishes in cool rushing water that tasted of minerals and moss. Each time I looked for Claire, she seemed distant, distracted. Marissa snapped photos of me when I wasn't watching, capturing me stacking firewood, making small talk with their grandmother, smiling at Claire over the soup bowl. She stored them on her phone with a secretive gleam in her eyes. By evening, I felt increasingly like an exhibit under her lens, a specimen under scrutiny. On the third morning, I found the map hidden under a cushion on the porch swing while Claire went inside to greet her grandmother. The brittle edges curled in my hands. I refolded it, unfolded it again, discovered the red scrawl beneath the living room floorboards. A warning, a clue. I examined the boards, testing each one until one gave slightly under my weight. Heart pounding, I retrieved from my pocket the small skeleton key grandmother had pressed into my hand upon arrival, saying it was an heirloom tied to the cabin's deepest secrets. My palm sweated as I turned it in the ancient lock, pried up the board, and revealed a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The stairwell groaned beneath my careful steps. As I reached the bottom, a single bare bulb hanging from a frayed wire barely lit the stone-walled cellar. Dust motes danced in the thin beam, and the air smelled of mildew and old wood. Along the walls, heavy crates sat in silence. Coils of rope lay piled in corners as though waiting for some purpose I dared not imagine. The center of the room held a wide oak table, its surface draped in a motley collection of photographs. images of me at every conceivable moment. Turning 16 with braces and an awkward grin, walking across the stage to receive my college diploma, drinking coffee at that very coffee shop where Claire and I first met. Each photo had a tiny handwritten date and location. My pulse hammered so loud in my ears that I could hardly focus. Beneath the photographs lay a leather-bound ledger. I opened it to a random page. There it was, entries of monetary amounts tied to dates, loans, reimbursements, mysterious assistance fees. At the very end, scrawled in jagged red ink, was the phrase final extraction for August 15th wedding day. The weight of betrayal hit me like a truck. Someone had catalogued my life, my moments of innocence and joy, and planned to extract from me every penny along the way. I fled the cellar, but not quietly. My foot slipped on the top step and I nearly fell face-first back into the darkness. I caught myself and bolted up the stairs. At the top, Claire stood in the doorway, face pale and drawn. Behind her, Marissa watched with arms folded, eyes steely. Claire looked on the verge of tears. Marissa looked triumphant. My chest heaved. I held a photograph in my hand and raised it so that Claire saw me. I asked how long this had been going on. I asked what crises had been real and what had been invented. My voice boomed off the cabin walls. Claire's shoulders sank. Marissa's lip curled, but her eyes darted like a cornered animal. Quietly, Claire admitted it was a con. They had seen my inheritance, a trust fund from my grandmother's estate sufficient to buy a home outright if they could gain control. They staged small emergencies to win my sympathy. Lost job, broken car, fake loans. Every time they extended a hand, it was to draw me closer into their trap. Anger surged within me, but so did a curious calm. I revealed the piece I'd held back until the right moment. I said I knew they had hired the woodsman Robson to stage a scare, that he had died in a fall last week, and that his insurance policy named his granddaughter Mallory as sole beneficiary. I pulled up on my phone the local news report. Obituary, coroner's statement, grief-stricken granddaughter refusing comment. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Marissa's face drained of color. I watched them crumble. At that moment, the cabin door creaked open and Mallory stepped inside. She wore worn jeans and a simple blouse, her dark hair pulled back loosely. Her eyes assessed us all with quiet authority. Claire and Marissa collapsed in tears. Mallory strode forward, took the ring I had intended to give Claire from my trembling hand, and placed it in her own pocket. I asked her to oversee restitution. She nodded, turning to Claire and Marissa with a gaze that seemed to measure their souls. Morning found me paddling away across the lake in a borrowed kayak. The mist hovered over the glassy surface, curling around me like a living thing. I let the paddle drift in my hands, feeling the silent spray of water against my skin. Behind me, the cabin receded among the pines. I didn't feel justice or triumph. I felt emptiness, a hollow where trust and love had once lived. Dignity, I realized, meant nothing if it cost everything else. Back in the city, I moved into a small flat with bare walls and a cracked window pane that rattled in the wind. I furnished it with thrifted pieces: a sagging armchair, a second-hand desk, a bookshelf that leaned precariously. I found work at a local animal shelter, spending mornings coaxing frightened dogs to eat and to trust. Their hesitant nuzzles and trembling tails offered a simple redemption. On weekends, I volunteered at a community center to coach children in chess, delighted at their first gleeful cries when they discovered a clever tactic or surprise checkmate. In each shy nod of appreciation, I felt a quiet stitch sewing closed the holes betrayal had carved in me. Nights, however, remained restless. Storms rattled the old window, and I imagined I heard Old Man Blackwood's ghost whispering from across the miles of wooded shore. In the dark, I remembered the cellar's dusty floor, the rows of photographs, the red ink that had plotted my undoing. I traced the scars of those memories like lines on a map too well known. Forgiveness, I learned, was not an act of forgetting but a daily choice to build something new atop the ruins. Each dawn I rose to fill bird feeders on my balcony and to say good morning to the stray cat that had adopted me. I learned that kindness need not be earned with deception. I learned that trust, once shattered, could grow again, fragile as a sapling but resilient under care. Sometimes I still dream of that hidden room and the moment I confronted Claire and Marissa. Sometimes I hear Claire's distant voice whispering through the trees. But each morning, as the sun filters through the curtains of my modest flat and the city hums with its endless energy, I remind myself that I chose to paddle away, that I chose to reclaim my own story. And though the scars remain, they are proof that I survived, that I refused to become a footnote in someone else's ledger, and that I learned to trust myself again one careful step at a time.